Alright guys, everyone took a seat. Look at y'all. What? You had a question up on the phone? There. So for those of you who don't know, I actually was in Asia just not even a week ago. So I am technically still jet lagged. Promise. We were on a flight. This would be like top heavy on this side. Well, everyone wanted to be on this side for some reason. So just FYI, my body, I've been turned into a pumpkin at night. So with that being said,
Where were you in Asia?
traveling. That is the longest trip I've taken as an entrepreneur. So 3 weeks overseas, everything delegated. I didn't even bring my laptop. I brought my iPad, didn't even use it. So it was a big deal. I could have paid for cell phone service, but I actually chose not. So I was just dependent on Wi-Fi because I didn't want,
The calls.
I didn't want the calls and the accessibility. Fun fact, Android people, you still reach me over there. So tonight I'm excited. Cole, how long have we known each other?
Probably 4 or 5 years now, right?
Something like that. Who here has had the privilege of meeting Cole before? Okay, good. Cole has been one of the most consistent attenders of these monthly meetings. And so we're going to share a little bit about his story, but we met. He has been coming to these pretty regularly, and so we've worked together a good bit. And during COVID, so Bob Norton and I did a class on house hacking. That if you go to Courtney10k.com on the Northshore REIA YouTube channel, there is a replay on that. But I wanted Cole to come tell his story because he does have an inspiring story, but also to give you guys some insight. This is one of the number one things I recommend people to do if they can, right? If they're, if they have the opportunity to. So let's get started. So we did build in some interview questions, and I was like, hey, just text it to me. I'll read it from my phone. And I forgot, so I'm not working at full capacity.
Normally I'm over there doing the live stream anyways.
All right, so let's first start off. So Cole, what got you started in real estate, or interested in real estate?
In real estate specifically, would be Rich Dad Poor Dad. Reading that, I was like 15 or 16 or so. I feel like
Who
that's
has a similar
everybody.
story?
Just one.
A few people. If you have not read the book, it was written in 1997, but generally speaking, when I ask who had Rich Dad Poor Dad influence on, 90% of the room raises their hand. So just FYI, if you haven't read it yet, I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'm
So
starting.
you read it.
I listened to it, and then after I listened to it, I bought it and read it.
Okay. Kudos for you. At what age did you read it?
I was probably 15. I listened to it at 15.
So kudos to him. He listened to it and went out and bought it and read it. So kudos to him. What got you interested? What did that book ignite in you?
In fact, I had the whole passive income thing, right? So, I knew after that, I was like, I want rentals in some way. Just didn't know exactly how to get them. But it definitely got me thinking about assets versus liabilities and wanting to buy assets, specifically real estate.
So when you got started, your goal was, did you get started thinking you were going to house hack, or what was it? You said rentals, right?
Yeah, at first, I didn't even know house hacking was a term. So I was really kind of keen in on rentals. It could have been trailers, multifamily. I didn't really know exactly what, but I kind of just got started knowing, all right, I kind of want rentals. I knew I wasn't much into flipping, but then eventually I came across house hacking.
So when you got started, what were some of the things that you did to help you because you're younger, you were younger when you got, you know, when you first read, so 15 years old when you read Rich Dad Poor. What were some of the other things that you started doing?
Learning a lot about credit and credit cards, because that's something that you need to get qualified for a regular loan.
It's also something they don't teach you in school. Keep going.
Talking with agents, talking with Bob, he helped out a lot for us, 15. And then I kind of had like a timeline in my head of like, when I turn 18, this is where I can kind of start, because you can't own a house under 18. So yeah, I mean, when I was 12:01 a.m., right when I turned 18, I got my first secured credit card and stuff like that, because I was really just trying to build credit there. So I think we went to a meeting. I was like at a meeting the next day.
Was that the first meeting I met you at?
No, it was a while back.
Because you started coming to REIA meetings. Mm-hmm. We met when you were 17. You started coming to these meetings. Your very first meeting, it was a lunch and learn. Who did you bring with you?
I was homeschooled since like second grade or so, and I had an economics teacher. So I was like, hey, you want to go to this real estate meeting? To my economics teacher, and she was totally on board. So it was me and my economics teacher were the first.
But do you realize that he brought the economic teacher, not the teacher brought him? Anyway.
How many houses has she bought since she came to the meeting?
You know, maybe one. Maybe.
So you started coming into the REIA meetings. You started learning about credit. You started. What else did you do to kind of educate yourself about real estate?
Bigger Pockets was huge. So I started reading some books. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head specifically which ones. I mean, there's one specifically that Bigger Pockets has by Craig Curla called The House Hacking Strategy or something like that. That was a big one that I read. But mostly come to these meetings and kind of running numbers. I mean, I got on a email list to where every day when something new came on the market, this was before I kind of knew about off-market stuff, I was looking on the market every day. And Bob would have some sort of automatic email list to where every morning I'd get my list of I was looking at multifamily then, all these new multifamily properties that come up in the morning, so I could wake up, I'd run numbers on all of them. Most of them did not work, and I'd do the same thing the next day.
So let's go ahead. So you read Rich Dad Poor Dad. You started getting in rooms that were elevating your mindset, right? You were with like-minded people. You were listening to podcasts. I'm a big fan. Don't get me wrong, Bigger Pockets has its place today, but it's not what it used to be. So if you ever want to get a good dose of Bigger Pockets, I always say go back to episode number 1 of the main Bigger Pockets podcast. I think they have 700 and something now or whatever. Go to episode 1 and listen to the first 200 or 300 episodes. They're golden. I feel like that was a huge. I had my second deal. My first deal took 9 weeks. My second deal almost took 9 months. And so I listened to I don't know how many hundred of those podcasts, and I literally just went in direct order, and it was a lot of education. And I know I have made that recommendation for years, and so I think that was one of the things you did. You started listening to them. So let's go ahead. So the whole entire time you're thinking rentals. You're at a younger age. You're starting to educate yourself. Let's break down your first deal, and I'll give you this back because it actually has the
numbers. So my first deal was in Hammond. I looked other places. I made offers on probably about 3 or 4 other properties before I found this one in Hammond. I specifically looked in Hammond because it seemed like it was a hefty rental market. More people rented than owned there, and I think that's because of school. So for the first one, I paid $115,000 for it, and then I had an investor-friendly agent. My agent was very helpful, and he talked to himself. He had rentals himself. So I got him to pay closing costs and then half of a roof. So it ended up being about $110 all in. So how'd you find the deal? MLS. So you were working with the investor-friendly agent. Yeah. So 9 a.m. on a Monday, I sent that email. By 2 p.m. I was in the property, and then 3 or 4 we made the offer. It was a hot market then. So.
When was this?
This was July 2020, so.
Okay.
So
So 3 years ago? Actually, July what?
it was, I graduated high school on July 12th. On the 13th, I closed. No. Yeah, closed on the 13th.
Do you ever hear that?
Thursday, anniversary.
What's that?
July 13th.
This Thursday is your
Oh,
anniversary.
you're totally right.
Congratulations on your real estate
Thank you, it means a lot,
anniversary.
yeah.
This is your anniversary
It's been a
party.
stressful relationship. It's been very stressful. I feel like I've aged 50 years. But.
So, all right, so 115, but you got some concessions,
Yes.
and I'll lower that. Talk more about the numbers, and tell more, what was it? So you were looking at a lot of different types of properties.
I was, yeah. I was really hard set on multifamily. None of those numbers were working out. So we came across a single family, and it seemed like it was a very good deal. So I put in the offer. There were 3 other offers. I ended up getting mine. More numbers wise, I mean, talk about like interest rates, stuff like that.
Yeah, so let's talk, so first of all, let's talk about, so it's a single family home, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house.
Yep, and it's in like the downtown Hammond area, so it's about half a mile from downtown.
Also, it's a relatively newer, younger home.
2001 built, yep.
So-
Vinyl on slab.
All right, so let's talk about, what is your interest rate that you locked in for the loan?
2.875.
In 2022, right? Okay. So 2.875. The next part of that is, what is that's a 30-year,
30-year fixed.
right? And then what is your monthly payment?
So then it was $648 a month, and that's PITI, so taxes, insurance, and everything. Because I had homestead, because I moved into that property, so I had homestead exemption. Insurance was a little bit lower because it was a homeowner's policy to go on with that.
So let's talk through that process. When you were looking at it, what was your goal?
I mean,
Move into it?
my goal was to move into it and then leave after a year. I was always running numbers with a traditional dwelling policy numbers without homestead exemption, so I kind of ran the numbers as a regular rental, and I had a plan to move in with a friend who was moving from New Orleans, and he ended up moving in the property. So that's kind of how it got started, and then I ended up renting out another room in there. But so he just started off paying me $400 a month for the first few months. I wasn't cash flowing, but it was helpful.
So you reduced, so what was it, 640?
$648 a month.
And so he was paying you 400, so you reduced, a lot of your expenses down, right?
But I talked him into getting another roommate by saying, well, we can, instead of splitting utilities 2 ways, we split it 3 ways. So we got another roommate paying $400 a month. And at that point, it's not like anything to write home about, but it was cash flowing from PIT.
And so listen to one of the things he shared. So this is a single family home with 3 bedrooms. Did you live in the master bedroom or did you rent it?
I lived in the master. I could have technically, I could have. Yeah.
Okay. Luxuries.
I had my little office space. It was nice.
So living in one of the rooms, renting the other 2 out. And so at first you only had 1 roommate, but then you brought on a second roommate. And you said something very important. When you were running the numbers, you ran them with, some of the owner-occupied things removed. So, for example, the homestead exemption, which removes a portion of the property taxes. Then the other part of that is the insurance, changed a little bit. That's really important. That was actually really smart of him because that 648, that principal, interest, tax, and insurance included taxes and insurance as based on him living in the property. But the minute he moves out of it, those numbers will change. And so if he's running those cash flow numbers, you want to do your best to do, in the commercial world, it's called a pro forma. It's that future value, or the future expenses, or things along those lines, right? And so that was actually very smart of him to do because it said, okay, the numbers are going to make sense when I live there, but when it's a normal rental, after the fact, will it still make sense? And so, all right, so you moved in. Those are your numbers. And then, so you were renting out 2 rooms for 400. So now your living expenses, your cash flow, you're making a little money for having roommates. But you also have roommates. So how was that? How many of you guys were like,
I was dead set on getting a multifamily and not having roommates, but I feel like I would have still been looking now if that was the case, maybe.
Multifamily is not easy to find. Maybe in New Orleans. Anyone want to move to New Orleans?
No.
Okay. I do. But so with that being said, it's like he did come to me and he was like, Courtney, there's not a lot of multifamily, right? And so there's a level there that you can either pay a premium, you can build it, you can wait for it to come around, or he took matters in his own hands and made a, I remember you saying, you said, Courtney, I can do anything for a year, right? He was willing to get uncomfortable, right? How many of you guys you're automatically uncomfortable for him at the thought of having, right? But first of all, one of them was a friend, right? And so there's a level there that I want to applaud him for that because that's huge. It was, hey, I'm willing to do this, but he locked in a great 2.875%. How much did you have to put down?
3.5%. So it was FHA. It was FHA 3.5%.
Great opportunity. Okay. All right. So at that point, talk to me about managing those roommates. Did they know you owned the property?
These tenants knew that I owned these roommate tenants knew that I owned
Did you
the
call
property.
them tenants?
No, I would never know.
Did you call them clients?
Hey, how you doing?
customers?
No. See, that can be interesting because you become friends with them to an extent, but you also have to have serious conversations. Like, I've had situations like this where, hey, rent's due, I need utilities here. So it can be really interesting, and it's still something that I'm dealing with to an extent, because you have to be cordial and you have to have these tough conversations with someone that you live with. And it's good to set expectations and have all your paperwork set from the get-go and say, this is on the first rent it's due, it's late on the 5th, this is just my process.
So let's talk about the paperwork. Normally, you do a lease and it's for the whole house. So what did that look like for you?
So I'm in a few house hacking Facebook groups, which sounds really interesting, right? So what I did is use a regular Louisiana residential lease, but then there's 2 addendums. There's a roommate addendum and then a rent by the room addendum. And that's basically saying I can't go into other people's rooms, other people aren't going to come into my room. And it's saying that I know I'm not renting the whole entire property in Hammond, I'm renting just a room here. So it's basically making that all cut and dry.
Which is, so anytime you do, for example, with apartment complexes, my mobile home park, things like that, you have community rules. And those are really important because it sets the expectation of when people live in community. So for example, I used to manage a marina. That was a community. We had rules. And so anytime people are in community, it's good to outline all those rules because people like to live differently than other people. And some people, let's just say it, are better off left in the country with a little space between them and the next person, right? Because they don't live in community well, right? And so different people live different ways, and so outlining all of those different expectations. Now, don't nitpick, right? But what are some things that are in those rooms? So you can't enter other people's rooms, other people can't enter yours. What were some of the other things?
I mean, no parties unless I'm invited, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's fair. And then I think those things are important to outline because ultimately, when people are living together, think about it when it's a multifamily. You've got, let's just say you have a triplex, and person in unit A is the type that should live in the country with acreage away from other people because maybe they constantly play loud music, or there's cat urine that is bleeding over into the other, whatever. one bad tenant can cause other tenants to leave, right? Just like in a multifamily, this is the same situation. So did you ever have any management issues you had to address between the roommates?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes if someone was trying to go to sleep and someone was playing TV too loud, you just have to have that conversation. But generally, it was like a college student or something, and they're all somewhat on the same sleep schedule, which like is not sleeping. And and I didn't run into many problems with that because they're all about the same age and kind of interested in the same things. And everybody got along pretty well. I never had any huge issues.
Did you screen for that up front?
Screen for them.
Like to be like a good fit for?
Yeah, we'd meet them, and then normally how we do it is we'll have someone come in and we'll talk with them for about 20 minutes or so. Normally we're looking at their Facebook profile beforehand, just kind of getting an idea of who they are, and then we'll have a conversation. How do you feel about them? You know?
So so let's talk about tenant screening. So you advertised the room for rent, and then when someone like was a good fit, you then had the other roommate meet them?
Yes, everybody would always meet. That's how we've kind of done it. We always set a time where everybody can meet everybody. Because think about it from the new tenant's perspective, they're going to want to come in and see their roommates. They don't want to go in blind. So generally we have everybody meet.
Okay. And then, so you did the lease with but basically like the house rules and the addendum that you're just renting a room.
Yeah.
How did utilities work? So it's a single family house, so it's one electrical meter, one water meter, trash, Wi-Fi. What did that look like, and how did you divvy that up?
There was also in the paperwork, utilities are due when rent is due, and so it's on the 1st. And basically, all the utilities stay in my name. I just divide it by 3 every month, and when I lived there, I paid 1/3 of it, and the other 2 roommate tenants paid the other 1/3, 2/3.
And you would just let them know every month?
Yeah, it would fluctuate, but it would generally be like $100 a person or so, something like that.
And then, I know you ended up evicting one of them.
So I did
you had
have
a conversation.
Yeah, so I learned a lesson here. I didn't have to go through the full eviction process, but I did have an instance where a tenant roommate person so they got behind on 1 month, and then that became 2 months, and really I should have had my foot down. I didn't really have hard set policies at that point, but I let that go too long, so it ended up being about 3.5 months or so of utilities and rent that I lost out on learning process, but ended up just being a notice to vacate, and then he left afterwards, then I replaced him.
Okay. So,
I have a question.
And it's
yeah.
So how did you deal with sharing the refrigerator, sharing the washer and dryer, and who parked where?
Who parked where became a problem sometimes.
Musical chairs?
Yeah, that was especially so that
Yeah, he was like a car bike guy, and so like I don't know how many vehicles you have.
too many, way too many.
Yeah.
So the house to the right of it in 2010 or so, it burned down, and there's a driveway, and the lady's nice enough to let us park there. So we would park there, and that was really nice. That would be the car situation. Fridge, condiments, people would kind of share, but if someone wanted their own food, you kind of knew it. Someone would have their own drawer in the fridge.
Did you like label them?
We didn't go that far. We were kind of laid back and not really like, it wasn't that big a deal.
I would have had like little labels. I would have been like,
and they're probably getting Chipotle those days anyway, right? Like they start cooking.
well, yeah. So yeah. So I remember going into a student housing one time, and they had that where it's like you have like the pantry is like that, the fridge is like that. Everyone has their allotted section.
Robbie Doodles.
That's kind of how it was, honestly. And then laundry, people had different work schedules most of the time, so when people were doing laundry, it would be at different times. Never really had an issue with that.
And the two guys shared the one hall bath. You and the master had your own.
Now my friend lives in he's still there, my friend, who moved from New Orleans into that property, and now he's in the master.
Is he paying more now?
He's not, because
What?
he kind of keeps an eye on the property for me. He changes the AC filter, so he's at the same price. But I kind of agree with you. He
So-
should pay a little bit.
So let's go there. First of all, Master, you could, because it has their own bathroom,
Yes.
you could charge a premium, just a flat.
Yes.
You could have, I know you took the luxury yourself, which is totally fine. You could have moved to one of the smaller rooms and rented the master for a
You're
premium.
absolutely right. Yeah.
What is it, okay, so what is that property worth now? And let's talk about the numbers now.
So I rent comp yesterday. It's about 155. It's worth about 155 now.
So since-
And they don't know what I've done on the inside as well. I've done some cosmetic updating, new vanities, painted stuff. So around 155 or something.
Okay, so he's gained some appreciation in the last few years. Thank you, 2020 cents. You're still locked in with that low 2.875%. I love how we say the whole 2.8.
Yeah, I know. I was really proud of that. So I
Yeah,
remember.
so you've got that locked in for 30 years. What is your monthly mortgage payment right now?
Right now, it's about 810 because it went up. Taxes went up, and then when I moved over from homeowners to a dwelling, and then that went up again. So yeah.
So it went from the 648 to around 810 a month. But what are you renting the rooms for now?
So I rent all the rooms, and I'm all occupied now. So it's $1,650 total. So $550 per room. So originally, when I was renting it out, it was $400 per room. But the cost of a room has gone up a lot in the last few years. So
Except
especially,
for the master and the one guy who's locked in.
you're right. He's got a good deal going.
The good tenants you want, you do want to reward good tenants, right?
Mhm.
And he's getting, so mentor tip to you, next time you renew his lease, if you're automatically just letting it be,
Mhm.
I would renew a lease and build in discounted rent. That rent is, let's just say $650, but you're getting a discount of XYZ to do XYZ. So that if he ever stops doing XYZ, so great, rents this. But then that he also knows that he's getting
Gentle
specifically.
parenting.
Well, no, to have it in writing, that
Yeah.
like, hey, you're getting rewarded for doing XYZ with this discount for rent. But, all right, good deal. You guys like this deal? Any questions about the deal? It's right around the corner from one of my rentals too, and so it's a good area right near a hustling, bustling part of Hammond. That still has some room for growth too, for sure. So let's talk about. I think my next question was, I know we talked about what was your lessons learned from that first deal.
What were my lessons learned from that deal? It was definitely so when you're renting by the room, you want to make sure it's a place that people want to rent a room. I think if you were to buy like in Franklinton compared to Hammond, more people are going to be looking for a room in Hammond because there's loads of college students there. And definitely also to run your numbers as a traditional rental as well. Because now that I've moved out, it would still work if I rented it as, probably rent for $1,200 or $1,300, something like that, as just a regular rental. You just want to make sure your numbers work, bare bones, traditional rental, when you move out.
So one of the things I'll say is, so my house around the corner, when he was talking about this, I was like, shit, I might start renting some of my room. My house is by the room, right? I use third-party management for the majority of all my rentals. And I've got rentals in, the North Shore, the South Shore, the coast. And what I found was third-party managers did not like managing rentals by the room. There is something new called Tab Split. Have any of you guys heard of it? Yes. They just opened up in New Orleans. I keep playing phone tag with the poor person who's the contact down here. But they're really big on, renting out by the room, and even a little bit more than that too, by the way. Like utilizing other spaces in the unit. So know that is something, number one, explore a little more of that pad slipping, but know that if you use third-party management, if you hear them, it's a little bit more management intensive than a normal unit, right? Basically, you're taking a single family and you're making it 3 units or 4 units, whatever that looks like. But traditional management aren't always the biggest fan. One of the things like obviously my house in Hammond, I was like, well, let me just go find someone that is student housing, because it's the same thing, right? But I'm not going to discriminate and say it has to be a student. It could be, a single person that's just working in Hammond. They could, whatever. That is something that I learned on my end. Have you ever talked to managers to see it? Like, you're self-managing.
I haven't. I'm just self-managing at this point, yeah.
But that's something for you guys. I don't want to manage. I don't have capacity to manage mine. So for me, when I explore an option and I explore a strategy, that's one of the things I look at. Who is my who that will step in and do the day-to-day stuff? And so keep that in mind. You either need to be prepared to self-manage, or you have to spend more time looking for third-party managers who are open to it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah.
Did you furnish some of the property too, or have them bring in their own furniture, or just furnish your main living area?
Furnish the main living area, and then the rooms are not furnished, so they'll bring in their own. Yeah.
All right. That was a good question.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I could probably get more by furnishing the rooms if I wanted to. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that really could have been an
And
option.
then there's
too.
also a hospital nearby as well. So
Treat it like a furnished rental.
yeah.
Yeah. And so John, I know you just came from Sarasota. Pad Split's pretty big down there. Are you familiar with it?
I'm familiar with it. I don't know anybody using it.
There were some other things that were, when I go spend time down in Tampa, a lot of the guys there, these rent by the room is a really big proponent for those who are looking for affordable housing. So think about this. One guy for $400, or originally others for $400, but now $550. Getting into a house that's a 3-bedroom house where you have a little bit maybe bigger amenities, maybe your living room, your kitchen, maybe your bathroom a little bit bigger than in a 1-bedroom apartment, right? Maybe you have a yard, maybe you have a full driveway versus an apartment or a condo complex. And so think about that, like where can you go find a $550 1-bedroom? Like, I'm still waiting, right? Because number one, that's probably Bogalusa. And then, something like that, right? Maybe a mobile home or something. But another big part of that is, this is a 2001 spec home, right? It's a decent house in a decent part of town. So know that I see this model growing. So Pad Split is a company that is very much like spending a lot of effort educating. That's why we're trying to get together to talk about it as far as education-wise, because I really think, so some of the big markets, going back to Tampa, some of those bigger markets that affordability is really out the roof. I have seen people doing these rent the room or various, I've seen people chop up living rooms and turn them into more bedrooms, things like that. I've even seen voucher programs give vouchers for the individual rooms in like an Atlanta or a Tampa. Because affordability. Someone has a voucher, they can only go for, let's just call it $700-800. Go somewhere in a market like Atlanta or Tampa, good luck finding that, right, to fulfill that. And so this is something that is a huge proponent. So it's obviously been around a long time with student housing and things like that. But I see it popping up more with affordable housing.
Disabled veterans would be another group.
Actually, that was the big one that I learned about. It was through disabled veterans in Florida. Those were the voucher programs that I saw coming up with it.
I'll say one other thing. Don't be afraid to let a room sit for a while, because if you're gonna be living with somebody and you just pick the first person that comes through, that would have been awful if I would have done that. So.
That might actually create better landlords. Just go live with your tenants for a minute.
At a young age, how did you qualify for the loan?
So my parents co-signed on the first one for the FHA. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk through that. So one of the conversations him and I had was some people would say, oh, well, your parents co-signed, and then all of a sudden people would be like, oh, well, then I can't do that. Like, this removes this option for me. You absolutely, for like an FHA loan, there's a lot of options out there, especially first-time home buyers, that you can even in parts of, I think, Jefferson and Orleans and I think Kenner, there's first-time home buyer credits right now going on, like up to like what, $65,000 in home buyer credits. There's tons of ways. He talked about how he got some concessions that paid for part of a new roof and reduced some of the closing costs and stuff like that. There's a lot of things you can do. He had a support system with his parents who were willing to co-sign on that, but maybe for you it's, well, let me go get a good job and let me talk with the lender early on. Even though they stepped in and they offered that, there is no lack of planning and work on his end that went into his 1201 on his birthday. He signed up for a secured line of credit card so he can start establishing credit and stuff like that. So I definitely want to encourage you to look at, understand and educate yourself, because this is why it's one of those reasons. He used an FHA loan, which is 3.5% down. You can even, some loans like a USDA loan could be 0% down, right? They have these first-time home buyer credits. These are some big options, and so this is one of the reasons why I tell people that this is one of the best ways you can get started, because you can lock it in. If you go and use a bank loan right now, it's 20%. A lot of them can be 20% down. That becomes very difficult. Run the numbers on 115 at 20% down versus 3% down. Let me tell you, it's 17% difference. but run those numbers, that's a chunk, right? And so this is a great opportunity. And so with an FHA loan, can you explain one of the rules you had?
Yeah, so you have to live in the property for 1 year. So that was, my goal was to kind of find the next one a year afterwards. But that's the big hiccup, that you have to live there for 1 year.
So again, you said I can do anything for 1 year, right? I can have clients as roommates. So what ended up happening with that property?
So I moved out of it 13 months later, and I've replaced myself with a tenant, and so it's been rented out since then. Yeah.
Okay.
I still rent it out by the room.
So let's talk about deal number 2. And look, I remember you came to me like at month 6 or 8. You were like, my 12 months is coming up soon, like to the day. And like he knew when it was coming, and so he was putting in the effort to like meet that criteria, so that he knew how long he had before he like to meet the criteria and the obligation with the loan, so that he wouldn't commit mortgage fraud by you have that first year that you have to live in there.
That old president doesn't want funds.
Yeah, you don't want to get that low loan rate with that 3% down and not live in it, right? So let's talk about deal number 2. How did you find it?
Someone I know. They were actually Courtney's old properties, so they were off market.
Let's talk through how that came about.
Well, you kind of said, hey, you're looking for something that's somewhat of a multifamily, something you could live in and then rent out the other unit. But it's technically 2 houses on one city block, or one lot. And you're like, would you be interested in this? I'm like, yes. So I got the information from who's selling it. Went from there. Yeah.
So, because he was looking for multifamily, and I know you were looking at, I think you looked at one other, like I remember one that you were looking at that was in pretty rough shape. You were going to do like a 2 or 3K loan or something like that. So you were like, fix it up. So my first rentals were in Hammond. I bought them subject to their existing loan, but I bought them with deferred maintenance and inherited tenants, and they kicked my butt. And so eventually I sold them to a magical buyer out of California. And I jokingly say that, buyers from California, right? I sold them all of these, it was multiple properties to this woman from California. And she got them?
Yes. I want to say, new AC, new roof, plumbing redone, to both properties, loads of
tons of work. So when I sold them to her, I had done one eviction And then the other one, I just told the guy to leave. And he listened, but he went 3 doors down and stole my no trespassing sign, so.
It's still there.
It's still there. Every time I'm like, you son of a gun, you took that. It's the smile, you're on camera sign. Anyway, so it was one of those things. It ended up working out for me selling to this woman in California. She owned them for, I think, 1 year. And then she goes, hey Courtney, I'm getting rid of all my Louisiana properties, and before I put them on the market, do you know anyone who'd be interested? And she had already sold one of them, and so she's like, I've got the 2 that are on the one lot. I was like, I actually might. Hold on. And so I said, hey, look, it's not a multifamily, but you're looking in Hammond. And let's explain what they are.
Mm-hmm.
So Chestnut.
Yeah. So it's a 3-bed, 2-bath on a slab, and it's a 1-bed, 1-bath raised. So now I'm currently living in the 1-bed, 1-bath. It's raised, and I rent out, still by the room, the 3-bed, 2-bath.
Oh, you rented out by the room now?
It's technically by the room, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah.
So originally you had rented out the whole house
Yeah.
to someone, but okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's been working well. I originally inherited tenants, just a traditional regular lease, and then when their lease, let me think. I may have re-upped for 6 more months with them, and then they bought a house, and then I started renting out to some college girls that go to Southeastern.
Okay, so we talked about how we found it. So by a referral, it was off market. How did you fund this deal?
So Ethan Hunt, he told me about this loan product at a local bank, First Guarantee Bank in Hammond. It's basically 5% down, conventional with no PMI, and that's a shortcoming of FHA. You have a monthly PMI payment. For me, that's about $89 a month. So with this 5% down, conventional, no PMI, it's amazing.
So basically, that $89 a month he has on this other house, which will eventually fall off, by the way, either when you reach a certain point in the loan or the appreciation has grown to a certain degree. But it's $89 that he's pitting out there that it's not going towards, the principal or anything like that. It's an expense, it's a fee. So to not have that, I mean, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then conventional, only having to do 5% is a big deal.
And they would lend up to a 3 unit. And that was the big thing. FHA, a normal FHA loan, you can do up to a 4 unit, but I think it gets hazy when you put little down. There's some kind of thing there. So that 5% down conventional was like, I want to use that.
So you did this second deal. So you're saving money because you still have to put money up front. And 13 months before you had just put 3%.
And I had to pay closing costs on the second one too. So.
Yeah. So those are like prepaids and things like that. So those things that's a big deal. Let's talk through the numbers. What was the purchase price here?
Purchase price was the purchase price was $170, and then I got $9,500 in concessions. The 1-bed, 1-bath that was raised, it was like a trampoline park. The subfloor was so bouncy. So
So she, like, when one of her repairs was not done right.
Oh, it was awful. And so originally I was getting contractor offers, like bids and how much it's going to cost. And my closing day was actually on the day that Ida hit. So obviously I ended up closing like 2 or 3 weeks later on. But for doing the changing out the subfloor of the 1-bed, I ended up going on YouTube and figuring out how to do it myself, which is ridiculous. But so it ended up being a little bit less than $9,500 from not doing.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Lumber
was expensive, so.
I went one day and he had like you can see all the joists from the front door to the back. I was like, YouTube is showing this? All right.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, and then you had some experienced people step in and show you.
Yeah.
Show you, some tips on the construction part.
Absolutely.
All right, so your purchase price?
Yeah, it was $170 purchase price.
Did I need $9,500? concession?
Yeah, 9,500 in concessions, and then my interest rate on that was 3.380, and this was in 2021 September. September of 2021. And so I had inherited tenants, so it was previously rented for $1,050 a month. And then when I re-upped with them that October, it was raised to $1,200 a month.
And what was your monthly payment?
$922.
So the 3-bedroom, which is literally, I mean, a rock's throw away, next door was rented for 10, went up to 12, and then you moved into the 1-bedroom house. So no longer do you have roommates.
No roommates, and no rent from that either, because that was rented out for $775 or so.
Right.
Yeah.
So and so you have a little bit of a lifestyle upgrade there, you know.
It's very nice. Although the ceilings are like 6'5", and I'm like
It used to be-
6'3", so.
I know I've told you this. It used to be a fruit stand back in the day, and the 3-bedroom house used to be a church.
Wow. It's an old New Orleans shotgun house. The first one is built in '33, so it's a cool little quaint house with really short ceilings.
One of the times we were doing repairs on it, someone stopped and told us the whole story about it. But, okay, so let's talk about like the management, screening, leases. So you had inherited tenants. So there was tenants in the 1-bedroom house when you bought them, or did they move out?
They moved out just in the nick of time, right when I closed.
So you were able to move in pretty
Yeah,
early
and then
on?
start tearing it apart.
Okay. And then you had inherited tenants for the 3-bedroom.
Yes.
Okay. And then and so now you said so you inherited the 3-bedroom house where it was just one lease for the whole house like a normal single family.
Yeah.
Now, because you have college students, you still are renting out the one, but you're technically renting out by the room.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And then, what about utilities? Let's talk about because it's 2 houses on 1 lot. And if you don't think this is common, I've probably done about 5 deals throughout the North Shore where it's multiple houses on 1 lot, and so it can get a little messy. Pretty much these are generally going to be older houses that are grandfathered in because they don't meet the setback guidelines, and you can't divide them because the lot is not the proper size anymore, stuff like that. So what are the utilities?
So the 2 houses are completely separate utility-wise. So I pay mine, they pay theirs, and none of those are in my name like the first property. They just take care of the utilities, water, electric, garbage, stuff like that. So it's all separate now. That's a lot easier.
There you go.
It's more like a traditional rental. This is basically a traditional rental that I happen to live next door to.
Basically,
Well, by the room, but
yeah, there you go. And then, so let's talk about the numbers now on this one.
so that one rents out for $1,250 a month total, and my mortgage is the same,
The mortgage is how much?
$922. So there is some homestead exemption, so we'll go up a bit when I move out, but also I'll have the rental, which should rent out for about $800 my house, $850 when I move out, and it will jump up some,
What is it worth now?
about $185.
Okay, so just
It's not crazy difference.
But still, so you have equity in both properties, you have cash flow in both properties, you have now 3 doors, but many leases because.
It's nice.
Any lessons learned from the second deal?
The second deal, I mean, inherited tenants can be interesting. They had 2 dogs, and they ended up kind of destroying a whole entire side of the wood siding of the property. So make sure when you close on a property that has inherited tenants, make sure you get the security deposits from the previous landlord, because I ended up having to use that because of just the destroyed side. This one's interesting. These tenants. So the first one, they all know that I own it. The second one, they don't know that I'm the landlord. So I live next door to them, and I guess when I signed the lease with them, they think there's this big mad landlord named Mr. Otis that owns this property, and
Why Otis?
yeah, it's the name of my company. It's Otis, but
So who is Otis?
Otis, it's the name of a car. Mine's kind of weird, right?
It could be whoever they think it is.
Yeah, but so they just think I'm a property manager, and I happen to live next door to it.
So when it comes down to house hacking, a lot of people say, okay, well, do you tell them that you're the owner or the landlord? Some of my properties they know. Some of my properties I'm the maintenance lady, right? And so that's a big, obviously when you're living in roommates with people, there's maybe some question, maybe he chose to tell him then. But this next one, he's right next door, and he's the property manager. So it's definitely something to think about.
A lot easier conversations there versus
No.
the owner. No.
I like it when I'm the maintenance lady because I'm always just the simple little maintenance lady. Oh, I gotta talk to the boss about that. Yeah, I'll let them know. Oh man, what do my friends say? My boss is gonna get on to me. You're behind on. He said you're behind on your rent. They said you're behind your rent. I can even lend you some money if you. One of my friends was saying how he used to always do that. I'll lend you some money if you just get caught up on your rent.
I mean, these are college kids, right? So they one time they wrote something really obscene on the door, and I just said, "Mr. Otis drove by. Not like what you put on the door. You're gonna have to take it down." I don't mind personally, but Otis was not happy. So sorry, and it was down the next day, so it worked out.
So management style on house hacking is something to consider. Obviously, New Orleans, there's duplexes everywhere. The most common thought is a 2 to 4 unit. So you're living, you've got a shared wall of some sort. Again, you've got to make that decision. Do you want to tell them that you're the owner, or do you want to be, the maintenance lady or the manager, right? The on-site manager. Another thought there is, we talked about, so he had a single family house that rented out the rooms, right? And then the 2 houses on 1 lot. Another situation, so we talked about the 2 to 4 units, but another situation could also be a house with a garage unit or something like that. Really what he has in the second one is a single family house with what, other places would call an ADU, right? A little small 1 unit in the back. It used to be a fruit stand, but it's a house, So let's talk about what's next for you.
I mean, ideally, I'd like to keep rinse and repeat house hacking until I'm married or something like that. I would like to try to house hack a warehouse. So like purchase a large warehouse and then rent out either for car storage or for mechanics or something like that, to where I can have warehouse space, but then also rent it out.
To put all your vehicles in?
To put all the vehicles in.
Okay, but he's also smart because so he likes to flip cars and motorcycles and things like that. So like even one of the things he did was he bought a car moving trailer and he rents it out, but you use it. And so keep in mind, like, that is a travel trailer hack. Maybe you want to have an office, like a commercial space. You buy the office, you rent your office space, but you rent the other ones and you office hack. He wants to have a warehouse where he can work and store his vehicles, but if he can also turn part of it towards generating income, the hack. You don't just, it doesn't have to be just a house, right? And so there's some thoughts there. Right?
There's an app for campers. So if you want a camper, you can rent it out part of the time when you're not using it and make it make sense financially.
And so there's things like that. And so one of my points here is I want to encourage you is to elevate your thinking. That Rich Dad Poor Dad said this. It's not I can't afford it. It's how can I afford it, right? And it's a way to say, okay. People do this all the time with homes, second homes. They have them as short-term rentals, vacation rentals when they're not staying there, right? And so there's a lot of opportunities here. People who you rent their car on Turo or whatever. There's things here. I don't want to encourage this sense of living above your means, but he has found a way to take his living expenses and erase them or reduce them, right? And in this day and age, that is huge, right? Think about how many people, how much of your personal life right now goes towards your living expenses, and how this could help someone. So you talked about how, you know, what's next for you is you like to maybe do one of the, like a warehouse hack. What else? Well, and one of the big things with that warehouse hack is that would most likely not be an FHA or like a residential type of loan, so you would have to find a way to change the financing for something like that.
Yeah, and definitely finding more house hacks with creative financing or subject to stuff along those lines, and not finding deals off the MLS, more off-market stuff is something I'm looking for the future.
Okay. And then, so if someone, what are your, as we start to land the plane here, what are your, if someone's considering house hacking, what are some of your tips and tricks and suggestions to them as someone who has done it a few different variables?
Well, I mean, it's helpful to move in with someone at first that you know. I mean, a lot of people say don't rent to someone you know, don't rent to a friend. And yeah, I can see that. There's definitely some truth to that. But if you're living with them and you've known them well for a long time, that was helpful kind of getting into it. So I would maybe recommend that. I mean, like I said before, like running your numbers as a traditional rental, making sure it makes sense when you move out, wait for taxes to go up, insurance to go up.
One of the other things you said was, and you said it lightly, and I didn't highlight it, but you suggested the numbers as a long-term rental as a unit, not by the room.
Yes, yeah.
Basically, it's having options, right? So, okay, if I can rent them out by $400 to $550 a room, you know, it'd be what, $1,650 is what Magnolia's getting.
Yeah.
But normally it would get how much?
12 or 1,300, something like that.
So do the numbers work at 12 or 1,300 in case you can't rent it out by the room? Maybe because of a legal ordinance, or you know, from the local municipality or something, or whatever. Maybe you can't manage it and no one will. You can't self-manage it and no one will manage it as a third-party manager. You want to at least be able to have the option to have it as a, you know, $1,300 a month, $1,200 a month rental, and the number still makes sense. Any other suggestions?
I mean, it's a great way for someone to get into a property for low down. I mean, you get a better interest rate on these owner-occupied loans. You can put less than 20% down. Generally, lending is a little bit more lenient. And, I mean, I would recommend, even if it doesn't cover the mortgage, I mean, just to supplement the mortgage, it's helpful.
Absolutely. And you can do this to 1 to 4 units, right? I mean, technically, that's getting the more favorable interest rates and the more favorable less down. Technically, you can do more than 4 units or commercial property, but if you go traditional financing, you're going to have, you know, put more money down. That's not stopping you from doing creative financing or something like that, where, you know, something that's like you were talking about. And so ultimately here, keeping multifamily in mind, or it could be, I've had properties before where there's multiple trailers on one property, or a house and a trailer on one property, or a garage unit like I mentioned, or you know, it could be like this one where it's 2 houses on one lot. A few different scenarios like that. I want to encourage you, because everyone thinks a duplex to fourplex, and if any of you guys have spent any time looking for those in this region, they're not easy to come by, right? And so by being open to these other situations, another house hack, the way that I did it, which is not a traditional house hack, is I bought a property that needed to be fixed up, and I fixed it up some, moved into it, and fixed up the rest while living there. And then I sold it. Basically, it was a live-in flip. It was a slow live-in flip. But at the end of the 2, you know, when you've lived in it for at least 2 years, 2 of the last 5 years, that when you go to sell it, it is tax-free up to a certain amount. And so for me, I guess you can call that a flip hack, you know, whatever you want, like a live-in flip, right? So for me, I didn't do the neighbor part, the roommate part, but I still utilized my house as a way to, you know, get this, capture all that equity tax-free, right? There's some things like that you can do, right? So know that in general, I want to encourage you to not just be so, it has to be a duplex to a fourplex, but specifically, maybe it's a single family house and you are like, hey, I can at least do it something hard for 1 year, right? And live in the master bedroom or the smallest bedroom, you know. I want to encourage that because, I mean, he got a 2.875% loan on a nice single family home that's now in his rental portfolio.
And there's a few different ways you can do it. I mean, like in New Orleans, there's, I think, quite a few people that live in a duplex, live on one side of Airbnb out the other side. So that's a form of house hacking. I know someone up in Cleveland that has a huge barn dominium. He's like living my dream. And he does wedding venues, and he rents it out every weekend, maybe if he's lucky, and makes way above what his note is. But then he just goes and stays at his parents' house whenever they're spending the night in a barn dominium. So that's a way of hacking like a barn dominium, like a huge barn.
The one thing about the Airbnb in New Orleans, new regulations, you want to look into that part. That is actually the one situation that is most set up to win, but yet there's still restrictions with the new changes.
In Louisiana, if you have bigger homes, like 4 bedrooms, 5, 6, 8 bedrooms, in Louisiana, we know people actually looking for residential assisted living homes. So you can rent a 4-bedroom house to a company that's running an assisted living home in that home, and like a house you would rent for $2,000, you can get $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month, and not have dogs and kids and all of that drama. And they actually do the rehab. So the company coming in buying it to do an assisted living home, you can have up to 8 residents licensed in Louisiana in a residential home, and they would do the rehab, and they would fix the bathrooms and the walk-in showers and all that. And you're going to get like double or triple the rent that you would get just rented out as a assisted living home. If you have a home like that, we know people looking for them actually.
So on the YouTube channel, I actually had one of my friends in 2018 come and talk on that topic. So residential, so not like the hotel looking homes, it's homes. I do know
a maximum of 8 residents in the.
So I do know that there's restrictions with it, like, you know, not a 2-story, you know,
Right.
there's like various ones like that, but I literally had a phone call with someone about that today, so I might come and chat with you about that, but I mean, there's different things like that. Jeremy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, what's your kind of like long-term play with the different houses? I mean, are you thinking that you're gonna draw out some of that equity as you see that as an opportunity?
That's not forefront in my
or
mind.
you're just gonna like keep it?
No, I mean, it's not forefront in my mind. I'm not opposed to it. But I mean, the play now is to keep house hacking, because I think that's one of the easier ways to acquire rental. And so keep house hacking, but eventually, I mean, I'd like these to be turned into traditional rentals at some point, not renting by the room and have it managed. But I think that's a little further down the road. I still have the capacity where I can manage all these. So that is it.
Are they still all in your personal name?
Yes.
So that is one, so specifically, I'm gonna get to your question next, but when you do buy something owner occupied with, like, you wanna explain what she.
I'd love to have it in my LLC, but it would have to be a refinance technically, and that would not look fun right now, so. Did that answer? I mean.
Well, yeah, so a big part of that is when it's owner occupied, when it's FHA, you can't buy it and immediately put it into like an LLC. And then, like he said, he would like to put them in his LLC, but they're asking for you to refinance to do that. Okay. Yes, sir.
I actually want to talk to you a little bit later, about it, because that's what I actually do now. Like, I'm a Army veteran, and my first house, I got a duplex, and I used my home loan guarantee for it. So I had to live there for a year, and then I took a lady out of foreclosure and subject to her mortgage, and that's in a little city called Harvey. It's right outside New Orleans on the West Bank. It's very close to Louisiana Tech, so I wound up putting 3 students and a single person in there and did $600 a room and maxed out at $2,400. And I have one more that's in Gentilly that's up for grabs. But I don't want to do that one alone. So I was just I want to kind of string to it a little bit. Yeah, it's about
Like,
some scratch.
you mean like a house hack?
Yeah, it's a 4-bedroom. The owner is good at fixing flips, and he got it all nice turnkey, but he's not good at rentals and stuff. He just wants to get a deposit amount, get out, and then subject to, which based on his location and the numbers works really well for someone who knows how to run rentals, which is what I do with the 2 that I already have. So I know that, and it's high in equity too. It only has like 8 years left on the mortgage. So yeah, that's one I'm really interested in.
Any other questions for Cole? Yes.
Mine, no, the bank name, that local bank name that you use with 5% down and no PMI.
Yes, what was the name of the bank? It's First Guarantee Bank in Hammond. First Guarantee.
We still have that.
Was that a temporary
I
special?
don't know. I'm gonna go recheck.
They're a really good bank. They do
They are.
really good with loans. Like they kind of just push out the loans. So
Yeah,
And they
First-
hold it in-house.
there's a
So for the 30 years of the loan, they hold it in-house. They don't sell off.
Which is actually a really big deal. First Guarantee out of Hammond. Another good bank is Heritage Bank. They keep their loans in-house. So that's another good one. But I don't know if they have that 5%. But here's the thing is, things are constantly changing in the lending world. You always want to go check back and see, hey, what do you have right now? What's the criteria right now? All of that. Yes.
Any problems on tenants sharing the bathroom and issues and?
Sometimes there would be a slight hiccup where someone wanted to take a shower at the same time, but normally it would be something that they could work out. I've never really had to actually jump in all that often with disagreements. I want to say, so the one friend that lives there, he works offshore, so he's not home all that often. So it kind of works out for the bathroom being open.
Did they use his? No.
No, but they did when I was living there.
So one of the big things, did you provide separate locks on the doors?
No, but I say I give that option. If you want to have a lock for yourself, you can definitely do that. No one has. We've had no issues with anybody stealing anything or anything like that. I run a background check. With renting by the room, I don't run credit checks because most of these people are like 18, 19-year-olds, and I don't expect them to have crazy good credit anyway. So I just do a background check and last months of pay stubs is generally what I do for the rent by the room. Or also have parents co-sign.
Thank you.
So the locks on the room's a good option there as far as kind of showcasing a level of privacy, right? Maybe organizing the shelves in the pantry, and then room A, room B, room C, whatever. There's things like that you could do, but I think one of the biggest things is that roommate agreement. Basically outlining what a good roommate is. Maybe quiet hours, outlining, some things along those lines, right?
I couldn't tell you to the T, but it's basically stuff like that. Quiet hours. It has probably like 30 things on it, but it's things along those lines.
So
I should have brought it.
but that's something that is important, is outlining when living in community. It's like the idea of, well, what if they want to have friends over? What does that look like?
Have any of the tenants that rent by the room been female?
Yes.
So like mixing genders, yeah.
Oh, mixing? Okay, yes.
See, I'm thinking about bathroom space and
Yeah. So the one next door to me, it's 2 girls and then 1 guy. And I want to say the guy is in a master with his own bathroom.
Okay, and the 2 girls share that.
Yes.
And I think that also comes with, so how he screens is he looks at the applicant, and there is a level here, fair housing, you can't discriminate.
Right.
But there's a level here that you could still have the roommates meet and say, hey, you can't say, oh, well, we're not going to accept you because you're a guy. You can't discriminate on gender. That's protected class. But you can say you weren't a good fit for the roommates, right?
Yeah.
I think if you're living there, you can say it though, right?
You technically can, yeah. But you still obviously
But not if you're
fall in under fair housing. And these three that live next door to me, they knew each other, so that was helpful as well.
And then you called, as far as they're qualifying them income-wise, like basically if they can afford the rent, it's based on the rent, not the whole unit, which is a big deal. Think about that.
It's based on just your,
Yeah,
portion
like,
of rent, yeah.
because think about this, a lot of times in the single-family world, we look for 3 times the amount of rent. So if it's a $1,000 unit, we're looking for you to make at least $3,000 in income.
Still what I think,
Right? That's not many people, people struggle with that 3-time limit. But then when you put them at $550 a month, that becomes a lot more, basically you have a lot more. Run into any pets yet?
Well, yeah, I had the inherited tenants that
Well, what about the shared rooms?
I don't allow.
You don't?
Yeah. I don't do pets.
Okay. So those are just things to kind of think through. Some of this stuff is, you learn through trial and error, right? But think about those things like that. Pets would be something that, as a community, what if someone has allergies, right? What if the pet's not friendly? And then also, are you forcing other people to watch your pet? Those are just some things I'm thinking of.
Yeah, one of them begged me to allow Mr. Otis to allow a parakeet, probably about 5 times, but it's one of those things, like once you start this, then it's like, okay, I have this little dog, and you can't start that, so there's no parakeet, sadly.
I hope everybody's allergic or the next person.
A car I have, I just call it Otis, and I kind of just wanted it to be a discreet LLC name, so it's Otis Holdings is the name. Just Mr. Otis. I don't know. I actually don't know.
Okay, but there is something powerful to having a third, like a higher power, a third party that you refer to. Well, I gotta go see what Mr. Otis has to say. That could be whatever, right? I gotta go see. When I'm the main slave, I gotta go see what my boss, what my boss has to say. I have no boss, right? But there is some power to that, right? Like, especially when you're standing face to someone they want an answer from me right now. Like, I'm not authorized to give an answer right now because I gotta go talk to Mr. Otis.
It'll be really interesting when they want to see Mr. Otis. I might need somebody else's help or something. I don't know what I'm gonna do then, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Roll down the window of a really tinted.
Yeah. Put those little glasses with the mustache on. Hi, I'm Mr.
Well, so with that being said, Cole, I want you to know I'm very proud of you for all that you've done from day one. Within yourself, you have sought to do great things, right? You have sought to do, to educate yourself, to put yourself in a better place, and I know that you're going to continue to do that. I hope you guys were inspired by his story tonight. Mind sharing how old you are? 21 years old, has 3 doors, and just getting started, really. So with that being said, I want to encourage you guys to know that he has taken the initiative to educate himself, but also that he has, with intention, gone after that next step, right? Hey, I'm at 8 months. I'm about to be at my 12-month mark. I need to start looking for a property because I have my 1 year to, right? But during that time, you were saving money so you can have the down payment. Like, there's things like that. So, well, look, you told me I had to go away. Who here has read this book, Shift by Gary Keller?
Started that.
So, Gary Keller, the guy, one of the guys behind Keller Williams, he's written many books. Most people know him for One Thing. The book One Thing, it's a pretty good book. Shift is actually probably the book I like most, and I've actually probably quoted the most. It's a really good book about, basically it's a book for real estate agents going through tough times. I'm not a real estate agent, and I took a lot from it. And so, who here has done their first house hack? Raise your hand. Who has done a house hack before? All right. Have you read this before?
No.
Okay. There you go. So, that book, one of my favorite quotes from it is, if a seller or a buyer is not motivated or realistic, they are a waste of time, money, and effort. And it sounds harsh, but it's like the idea that in a changing market, if someone's like not really ready to, you know, take action or something like that. So, with that being said, at the end of the day, you never know who you're going to meet in these rooms, and you never know the relationships that you're going to build. We met in this room years ago, right? At 8:45, we actually head to Chimes down the street. Anyone's welcome to come. You're welcome to grab your own drink or your own, you know, order a meal. But that's where we go and we extend the networking. But otherwise, our next meeting is August 8th here in this room. Around the first of the month, I'll announce, or maybe sooner, I'll announce the topic and the speaker and all that. But thank you guys so much for attending. I will see you guys at Chimes if you want to join us.